Yes, now I can see.
Okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our 10th session of the coalition. And we're really very happy to have you all here. Probably you were aware that in our session yesterday, we had a record of attendance. We reached like almost 120. So we are really hoping that you found that a useful session. We know that there are many, many more things to do, and we keep discovering more and more opportunities for further engagement. So we'll continue looking forward to identify all these opportunities and leverage on all the experts that are always open to support us. And again, we're very, very thankful for them. So we are getting started. And just as customary, we will start with a few housekeeping messages. Remember, this session is going to be held in English. We are recording the session, and this one we're going to be making all the content available to members only. Remember, this is a closed session only for coalition members, and of course, member companies of the principal members and friends and partners of the coalition. Your microphones are closed, so we can prevent background noise. And again, let's try to make this as an interactive session as possible. So please post your questions in the Q&A feature. But if you feel that it is better for you to voice your question, just raise your hand and we will open your microphone so you can voice your question throughout the duration of the session. And without, so we have our agenda in here. We're going to start with a customary update of what the TechSec has been doing in these past few months. And then we will dedicate the rest of the session to discuss on where we are on the really great work that the working groups have been developing in these past few months. And we also expect that everybody might be available to contribute to the work that is being done by led by really great coalition members and a lot of volunteers that are contributing to the work of the working groups. So with this, let's get started with the update from the TechSec. And for that, I'm going to be sharing my screen. Just give me 1 second so I can have my deck available here. Just 1 minute so I can make sure that I am sharing the right screen. That I'm. Can you see my screen? No, I guess not. Okay. Can you see my screen in presentation mode?
Ainda não, Sandra.
No.
Okay, just give me 1 second. So are you seeing it in presenter mode?
Yes.
Okay, just give me 1 second then. Okay. Now you should be seeing it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So let's get started with our final report on the MDRC. Even though it has not been released to the public yet, we are a few, hopefully days or few weeks for that to happen. But we really wanted to share with you some of the top level highlights on what we had achieved during the project. And as you may remember, we covered 4 countries in Latin America, 3 countries in Africa, and 1 country in Indonesia. And what we were aiming was to build capacity of partner countries in regards of procedures for medical devices related to implementation, utilization of international standards and conformity assessment procedures, to identify what were technical barriers to trade for medical devices, not only to take care of needs during the pandemic, but also for daily needs of patients in the region, and of course, to identify opportunities to remove them. Also, to increase the availability of personal protective equipment during the pandemic and other technologies to respond to the crisis. And of course, to foster private sector engagement, and as you always listen to me saying, on our core responsibility, not only in public consultations, domestic, but also to make sure that notifications to the World Trade Organization are done for the draft technical regulations, and of course, all related to standards for medical technologies. So what are the top outcomes of our activities within the MDRC project? And in here you can see this chart that it is, we could say, kind of like impressive, because you see that throughout the work that we did in regards of capacity building, we ran 73 workshops. We had almost 12,000 attendees. Of course, this is counting, I mean, every single individual that attended a workshop. And of course, we know that there are several individuals that attended various of the workshops themselves, but still, it is really a very impressive amount of persons that now are aware of many critical topics in our sector that we are convinced that are going to be helping for facilitating, for aligning in a much easier way the development or of the update of regulations in not only the countries that were project countries, but also in many other countries, because we were also benefited out of a halo effect of all the work that we did, because we had many other regulators from Latin America, many other regulators in Africa that attended these workshops. And we ended up counting close to 60 national regulatory authorities that took part to a certain extent on all the capacity building that we did. And to count for almost, a little bit over 40,000 person hours of training. And as you may recall, some of the key topics that we covered during these workshops were related to implementation of good regulatory practices, and to make sure that references, international references as the ones produced by the IMDRF, are also utilized as basis for the regulations. Of course, to help them use in a more effective and efficient way international standards as the base of the development of regulations, and of course, leveraging reliance pathways to streamline market authorization processes, and of course, at the end of the road, to positively impact medical devices throughout their entire life cycle. And I'd like to highlight some of the top outputs that we got for the countries in Latin America. We do not want to go all the way through all the other countries, but focus our conversation in the outputs in the region. So for Brazil, in regards of capacity building, we had several activities that were focused on that covered mainly 3 events that were related to GRP and international trade, conformity assessment for medical devices, and of course, also for post-market surveillance. And in regards of review and analysis, we had the opportunity for the dissemination of good regulatory practices and conformity assessment checklist that was developed, as you may recall, as a specific request from Mexico, COFEPRIS, but that ended up benefiting all the countries that took part of the project, and that this is information that it is available through the coalition. So any other national regulatory authority can also benefit out of those checklists on GRP and conformity assessment, which beauty, I would say, is that helps national regulatory authorities to make sure that while developing their regulations, they are in full compliance with their obligations on the TBT agreement. There was really a very strong incentive to improve in Metro Anvisa workstream, and of course also to support in Metro to review the checklist on TBT and conformity assessment, so they could use that as a benchmark for their internal standard operating procedures. As for Colombia, we developed several workshops on GRPs, on the SOP for the implementation of the procedure that they developed within their quality management system at the Ministry of Health level. We ran several workshops also on ex post and ex ante evaluation. The very initial point on the definition of the problem that is intended to be solved either via regulation or any other alternative was also part of the topics that we included in the capacity building initiatives. And we also had a workshop on good manufacturing practices as they are in the process of developing for the first time their regulation in that regard. And on top of that, we also agreed to help Colombia develop their guideline along with NIST to be applied for personal protective equipment. As for Mexico, we had capacity building also in many different topics, including GRPs and medical device regulation, the checklist that I have also already mentioned, the utilization of international standards and conformity assessment. We had a huge training on quality management systems, including both ISO 13485 and MDSAP. And this session was the one that hit the top of the audience of all the sessions that we organized, and it was over 500, both in person and virtual attendees. We had another workshop on stability studies for medical devices, and of course, software as medical device and UDI. And here are the different elements that we developed for COFEPRIS and all the elements that we contribute in partnership, of course, mainly in this case with FDA, for Mexico to become an affiliate member, for COFEPRIS to become an affiliate member both of MDSAP and IMDRF. And as you are all aware, as Mexico is in the process of reviewing their good manufacturing practices regulation, we also developed a position paper and had an active participation in the review of the new proposal for this regulation. For Peru, let's say that it was kind of like limited what we managed to achieve. We could help them updating through their triennial process all the medical device procedures. But the good news is that now there are drafts for the regulation on IVDs and also for medical devices that are in the step of open public consultation at the domestic level. And here are some figures that might be shocking for some of you, but that are really something that is helping us to drive the message of the need to continue helping developing capacities and helping aligning regulations in order to gain efficiencies, or at least to prevent losing a lot of money because of barriers to trade are there and that are coming from misalignments with international regulations. So we ran a calculation that helps us identify that non-aligned medical device regulations, requirements on those regulations account for a total annual cost of $50 billion. This is worldwide figures. If we just consider MDRC countries, the 4 in Latin America, 3 in Africa, and the 1 in Asia, we accounted for $2.35 billion. If we go and see just a projection on having the model that was developed by the Ministry of Health in the implementation of a standard operating procedure to strictly follow good regulatory practices, the impact for that would be $1.75 billion. And what we calculated as the savings produced because of the policies that have already been implemented, it accounts for $235 million. These are, at least we see, as very, very impressive figures. And what is next in regards of MDRC? Well, right now we are putting together a new application for a phase that was just recently announced that we identify as a Standards Alliance 2.5 that is going to be running from January 2025 until May 2026. And what we are proposing to cover in that as a continuation of the work that we did under Standards Alliance 2.0 is to continue helping capacity building for IMDRF affiliate members and applicants. And that is coming as the success that we reached in the training session that we helped FDA put together in the sidelines of the IMDRF meeting back in September this year in Seattle. And now the management committee of IMDRF decided that they want to have these training sessions, sideline sessions for these type of members throughout their activities. So we're putting together a proposal for that to be happening in the session in March 2025. And of course, we intend for that to be continuing and for us to continue to support them moving forward. And for Colombia, as per the specific requests of INVIMA and DMP, we have a few topics that we are proposing to be included in this next phase of the project, so we can support them with resources and the technical knowledge for these activities to occur. And then I see there's a question here. Okay, no, there's no question, I'm sorry. So here we're listing the working groups that we have in place, and I'm not gonna stop and spend any minute with this because we are having the leaders of all these working groups, and Roberta that is helping us coordinating the work of these working groups, presenting on the progress they have already achieved. So let me get into the next slide. And okay, I'm sorry. So now we will get back to where we are in the countries and what are still the open items that we had at a country level. So we may discuss to the extent that you would want during the Q&A session or throughout the session itself. So for Brazil, for Argentina, we have the electronic CFGs. For Brazil, we have a huge challenge, as most of you might probably be aware, on human resources at ANVISA, available human resources, because there is a large amount of reviewers that are reaching the retirement age, and there is no plan to replace them. So that will create a tremendous bottleneck at ANVISA. And we heard yesterday, I mean, Reliance seems to be one of the solutions, but that is not going to be solving the whole problem there. So there's a lot of activities going around trying to support ANVISA and finding ways for them to get the right number of resources in order to perform all the activities that they have legal obligation to perform. Of course, there's still a lot of room to continue in the maturity process of the Reliance mechanism implementation. There's still a lot of work to be done, and Marina has been really instrumental on the progress that we have achieved related to good regulatory practices within Metro and Anatel. There are challenges on the reclassification of products as per the new RDC 830/2024, the changes from class 1 or 2, sorry for the typo in here, to class 3 or 4. And of course, the electronic IFU for medical devices, and sorry, Reliance is repeated in here. And for Chile, we are still waiting for the Ley de Fármacos 2, or whatever is going to be ending up being the regulation and the law for medical devices and IVDs, the challenge of proper utilization of international standards, and the challenge of really implementing the working groups and the public consultations for the regulations that they want to develop. For Colombia, the development of a reliance policy that it is of high interest for INVIMA, regulation on reprocessing, the process of continuing to update decrees 4725, 3770, and clinical trials. Remember, these are the decrees that are related to approval of medical devices and IVDs. To continue with the implementation of GRPs, as you saw in the project, in the 2.5 project proposal, we are including GRPs to be implemented also at INVIMA level, not only at the Ministry of Health. The regulation on good manufacturing practices, and to support them in their applying to become members both of IMDRF and MDSAP, and the latter being really very critical now that they are in the process of developing their regulation on good manufacturing practices. For Ecuador, we continue with the challenge on UDI for public procurement and the regulation on post-market surveillance. For Mexico, as I already mentioned, good manufacturing practices regulation that is in the stage of having just closed the public consultation period, both domestically and internationally. No responses to the comments have been reached. As you are probably aware, there was a recent change in the government, and in that regard, there's a recent change in the head of COFEPRIS. She only took off the office like 2 weeks ago. So there has been kind of like a cricket standby situation in COFEPRIS that we feel that it is natural. And of course, we are all following up closely on what the outcomes of the revision of the NOM are going to look like, to make sure that this is aligned with legal obligations, both at TBT agreement and the USMCA. and we provided comments in the international consultation, just specifically in that regard, as we have committed with COFEPRIS that we were going to be pursuing. The reliance policy, that it's an expanded equivalence agreement that would include the recognition of certifications issued either through MDSAP, ISO 13485, or the same NOM 241 that, again, has been open, that COFEPRIS has not replied to CONAMER in regards of the regulatory impact assessment since March this year. So we are waiting to see what is going to happen with this new government. And the same situation is for the regulation on labeling and post-market surveillance. And the backlog situation seems to be improving. That is the feedback that we have from many of the member companies of the principal members of the coalition. We see that they have more than doubled the output that they used to have. So we are expecting for the backlog to eventually be solved. And for Peru, as I just mentioned, the development of a new framework for IVDs and MDs is happening right now. And there is still the proposal for developing an ad hoc regulation for customized devices. And at a regional level, as we discussed back in March, we are pursuing the publication of timelines for approvals, changes, and renewals for the coalition countries, I mean, the countries that are represented in the coalition, and we're expecting to issue a first initial edition before the end of 2024. And for 2025, what's next? Well, we will be celebrating our 5th anniversary, believe it or not. I was kind of like shocked when we were discussing that, yes, we're about to turn 5 years old. And that is going to be the time for us to update our coalition action. Now that is going to be 2025 to 2030. So we could appreciate all your support. So for all of us to be prepared for what we want to have included in our plan for the next 5 years, so we can discuss them in the March 2025 meeting. And we would like to use as guidelines the action plan on health and resilience in the Americas that was issued in the 9th Summit of the Americas, and as well as the Declaration on Good Regulatory Practices that was also issued then. We will have executive committee elections, and we're planning to have our in-person meeting in November in the sidelines of the 10th Summit of the Americas that is going to be held in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, in November 2025. We don't have visibility on the exact dates right now, but we will let you know as soon as we can. So for your budgeting purposes for 2025, please consider that this is our plan for our in-person meeting to be held in November 2025. And with this, I conclude the update on the technical secretariat. So if there are questions or comments, let's get started with the discussion. Okay, sorry, just here, there's a question. Natalie, congratulations to the coalition for its 5th anniversary and the amazing work that have done along this time. Thank you for all your support. And really, thank you very much, Natalie. But as we always say, this is a teamwork, and this is a teamwork where the coalition is only bringing to the attention and supporting all the activity that the principal members and the member companies are doing. So we are here to serve you. We are here to support your work. We are here to share with you what we learn being exposed to so many different fora to identify tools, to identify initiatives that may support the amazing work that all of you are doing in your respective geographies. So really, we're the ones that are thankful for all the support that we receive from all the principal members and the member companies and our and the partners of the coalition, because without that, well, it really wouldn't make any sense. And again, our commitment to continue to serve us to our full extent, to support all the initiatives and to support on the solving of the challenges that all of you are facing on a daily basis at a country level. And for the question from Gabriela in regards of the November meeting, whether that is going to be hybrid or just in person, we would definitely be planning for that to be hybrid. We see the value of having both alternatives, but we really look forward to have as many of you as possible joining in person, because again, the beauty and the richness of having in-person participation is really tremendous. There are so many side conversations that help us better understand, better learn, better leveraging on the expertise of all others that we know budget constraints might be there, but if there's an opportunity, we would really encourage you to try to make your best to attend in person. And yes, of course, we will be sharing all the slides, all the materials. Those, remember, are for coalition members and their member companies use. These are not going to be shared in the website of the coalition because this is our internal material. And I guess with this, I'll turn the microphone to Roberta. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandra, and congratulations on the anniversary as well. I'm really happy to be working with you. So welcome, everyone. Let's dive into today's presentation on our working groups. And we want to share with you what the team has done so far. And please participate, because this is very useful for us to get your insights and to make our proposal grow together. I want to invite Renata to present the two first working group, and I want to say a special thanks for her for taking over Reliance team as well. So Renata, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll open my camera here from the other one. Okay. Home, I should start with Reliance one, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sure. Can you see presentation mode?
Yes, now we see it in presentation mode.
Okay. So good afternoon. So we did a lot of work on the regulatory reliance, but it's still a lot of things to do. And as Sandra mentioned, that do the non-alignment, we are spending 50 billion. So we expect to reduce at least 5% if we could move to reliance in Latin America. So let's go. So when we start the group, what were the capabilities that we were expecting? So be the experts in regulatory reliance, using the guidelines, the reference that was already there. So we don't want to create anything, because we had guidelines from WTO, DMTA, we have international reference to move forward. Align the terms to simplify the understand, educate and standardize criteria among the agents. Each agent has your own style, your own word, your own vocabulary. Everything is different, so we are trying to align things. And we are defining the scope per stage according to the pain points to apply reliance, and create a toolkit with examples, guides, case study, and other things to support the regulators and facilitate. The stakeholders, the idea was to map all initiatives that was already done in Latin American countries, and the ones that they were implementing, try to use the reliance inside Latam, so not only use the recognition from other recognized authorities like Europe, Australia, Japan, but also inside Latam. So promote the start use of reliance. In the framework, advocacy to create the framework to clarify and define, and modernize the system to create efficiency and avoid unnecessary complexity and extra work for everyone, industry and also regulators. So when we start the group, so the kickoff was Q4 2023, but we really start on Q1 2024. So what we did, we mapped the regulators and some pathways that they were doing through reliance. We classified according to to the advocacy priorities. We identify different ways to advocate, and we share the positions that we already had in our hands. And we include different forms for reliance. So we try to put in their mind that recognition is one thing, reliance is another thing. So this was the pathway that was chosen at that moment. And we enforced that reliance was losing of authority. So I don't know if people were here yesterday, but the regulators, they mentioned a lot that it was not lose of authority. It's another way to analyze things. So the target date, the train target date, it was mid-2024. However, we had to change the timelines here a little bit. So we are putting the training target date moving to 2025. Why? Because we are still collecting some examples. So we are exchange group with materials. I will present the other group that is CFG and CFS, and we could do a leverage, the material from a group to another. We are building the toolkit from the industry, and we have to provide training to them, because when we assessed the regulators, we could see the gaps, and now we need to work on the training, kind of tailor-made training for each regulator, and a gradual approach for reliance with each regulator. So Bolivia is one way, Anvisa from Brazil, it's another way. So we are kind of customizing this approach. So I bring this slide here from WHO because since 2021, there is a lot of things that's related to reliance. So they did a lot of presentations, so the good regulatory practice that we should identify the gaps among the practices. So use it for all the relevant, so that the use this practice would be relevant to all regulators. So according to the maturity, we know that we have different maturity levels among the regulators. So this would support. And the good reliance practice, that is our topic. So it was important for international cooperation to make best use of the resources. So everyone knows, and Sandra just presented, that we have a huge topic, a huge gap of resources in Anvisa, in COFEPRIS, in all regulators, and it's not increasing, it's decreasing. So reliance is the only way that we can find to fix this gap that we have. So where everything starts? We could realize that after the assessment, that if the country it's active, it's part, is inside IMDRF initiatives, we have at least a bridge constructed. So why Brazil has a law in place? So they put the regulation because they are on the committee of the IMDRF. Now we have Argentina that is becoming more robust, and we have, thank God, the affiliate members. So we have Chile, Costa Rica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Mexico, Paraguay, and Peru as affiliate members. And with that, we expected that our conversations related to reliance will be much more easy because IMDRF, so they try to do the conversions, the leverage resources, and they mutual interest in medical device regulatory activities. So if they are members, if they are there, if they are part of IMDRF discussions, we have the doors open to start the conversations on reliance. So what I bring to you here is the status. So in 2021, we had an interesting article from PAHO that we had 13 regulatory authorities that they themselves, they consider that they were using reliance in 2021. So Argentina, Colombia, all those countries here, they were saying that they were using reliance. Doesn't matter if it was for audits or for pre-submission, post-approval, they were saying, they were analyzing that they were using. If you go to Copilot today and you ask, what are the countries that are using reliance? Those are the ones that will appear first. And if you refine, we will have a lot of other countries. And why we have that, and I'll spend some time here on this slide. Because the regulators, they believe that sometimes even use a document from another authority, this is a kind of reliance. So we have much more work to do on training, on trying to standardize the common words, what we really want on Reliance, because it's not just recognize one document, it's much more than this, it's broader than this. So what I bring here is that we improved a lot, but we have a lot to do. So we have we have to move forward with the regulators. I'm sorry, things is popping up here. Sorry. So we have a lot of things to do, because when we go to the industry asking the feedback, if Reliance is working for them, what they are saying is that, well, we have the regulation in place, but it's not the way we are expecting. Well, we have a law, we have conversations. In Colombia, we started conversations, but the requirement's not published yet. So we know that we still have our work as a group, so we need to work in the industry, what we really want, and with the regulators. And we have here the roadmap. So as I mentioned, we start the group on Q4, but the initiative is really starting on Q1 2024. So we rank the priorities. We try to map the ones that were part of IMDRF, the ones that had a type of initiative using Reliance. Then we share some position papers, GMTA, WTO guidelines. We classify the regulators, the one that would be priority, like Brazil, Mexico. We identify different ways to advocate. We try then in Q3, we training on some training activities. We provide some training on some small countries, use Reliance practical examples such as MDSAP. And now on Q4, we still have to provide training, and we are using Reliance, in Reliance, the same document as it was used for CFG and free sale. Why? Because one thing that was identified at the regulators, and Patricia Pineda showed yesterday how to do the search on a product inside FDA website. It's not simple. So you put the name and then you don't find the codes, and you have a different name. In Brazil, they ask you a name. In Colombia, if the name is different, they ask you to remove a word that doesn't make sense in the country. So it's not easy to find the products inside the authority's website. So we produced a work instruction, and I can also share a way to find, I'll briefly share this with you, on how to find the products in at least the key ones. They are Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, and US. So we provide this work, we are creating this, we put together how, step by step, how they should access the tool, and click and put the name on the product, and then they will find one by one, so they can easily try to find, so they can try at least to find a way to find the products. Sharing with you, Japan, for example, they have a PDF file for periods. I believe it's 6 months or 1 year. I use my company, sorry about that, but the one that we had here. And then back into the slides. So when you go to Japan, they have a period of approval that we have to download the PDF, and then you do control finds to find the product inside that PDF list. So it's not easy for them to find. So one idea is to teach them on how to use this so they can try to find the product approvals. And then for next year, we are still having work on that. So regulatory framework and monitor the milestones and define new actions, because every time we access, we define more actions here. I took the print screen from Patricia Pineda's yesterday's slide, and I put her name here because it was very good to see that everyone sees the benefits and the outcomes of implementing Reliance. So everyone wants to improve the knowledge among the regulators, in strengthening their regulatory capacity, promote the participation, have the rapid response to emerging situation, and also to have the product in the market. And what we need as a region, we need a more agile regulatory process. So what we need is not to spend a long time waiting for a small country approval, because there is no benefit to anyone. So we have the patient impacted, we have the industry impacted, we have our resource. So what we really need is the more agile regulatory process. This is the reason we are here. So we did a lot of things, but there is still a lot of things to be done. And please share your thoughts, because we are open to implement actions here and to hear from you, your expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renata. And we have comments in the chat box sessions. We have congratulations for you and how you presented the panel. Really like your guide on how to look for in different agencies. And there's one question regarding the difference between being an official observer compared to affiliate member in IMDRF. I don't know if you want to get that or
Sandra could help me with that, right?
or Sandra, or I can share it as well, and we can discuss.
Roberta, please, and I can
Okay.
complement as you consider.
Okay, so what I get is, I'm sorry, there's something in my eye.
Argentina was just so good.
Sorry for that. So an observer participates in closed meetings, and I understand they have no vote, and they have both voice, but they do not vote. And an affiliate do not participate in closed meetings. That would be like in practical, I mean, talking in practical terms, as the question said. Sandra, do you want to complement or go deep?
Yes, affiliate members can also only participate in open working groups. And just for everybody to have full visibility on what does it mean to be an observer member or an affiliate member, I just included in the Q&A the link to the document issued by IMDRF that is named IMDRF Standard Operating Procedures. There it is defined all the process to become, I mean, what is it? It need to be a management committee member, an observer member, or an affiliate member, and the whole process to become either or, and the obligations and responsibilities that are coming while being every type of member. So you already have that. Just let me know if you can see that, because I typed it. I mean, I included that in the Q&A. So just if you can let me know if you can see it. And in the meantime, Leticia, I wanted to send a message in the chat box to everybody, but I don't know why it is not displaying. So if the technical team can help us, so we can also include that in the chat box.
Yes.
I'll appreciate it.
I
Thank
see
you.
it in the chat box in the part of answers. I see your link.
Exactly, in the Q&A.
Yes.
So if everybody can take a look at that, and we will check on why I cannot send messages to everybody, but as soon as I can, I will also include that in the chat box.
Thank you, Sandra. And we have one more question, and is, do we have any intention on creating a white paper from the coalition regarding global reliance efforts, like clarify how to operationalize, to distinguish different types of reliance, etc., or are we planning to keep using the GMTA one? Sandra, do you want to go first?
I have a volunteer, Stephen. Would you mind jumping in?
Okay.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Glad to see so many friends and colleagues. On this one, Andrea, I would say, first, we are GMTA, both as the coalition and as individual associations. So at any time, we can propose modifying or updating the GMTA paper. But maybe as a step to doing that, I think we certainly have the independence to build upon that paper and create a coalition paper that it maybe expands on it. And then we suggest that to GMTA, recommending that they update the GMTA paper with the additions and improvements that we've provided from the LATAM region. I would offer that as one possible path forward. Thanks.
Thank you. And Gabriela, you have your hand up.
Good afternoon to everyone, or good morning, whatever it is correct for you. I have the same issue that Sandra has. I couldn't do my comment in the chat, but I want to share, and also it's a question. Last September in the EMDRF group, they tell that they're going to be creating a new group for Reliance. So they understand there were so many geographic doing Reliance guideline. So the EMDR decided to do by themselves. They say that they will not create anything new, that they will review whatever it was published, but they said that they will have the result in 2025. I would like to know if it is possible to know which country are participating in that group in any way, and if they really want to have some result in 2025, because if they do that, it will be easy for us wherever thing is going on moving forward. So that I hear in September, it was great to hear from them that they realized that every single Reliance it was different, and so they take the job to do a general guideline for the world.
So I was not aware, but of course we can try to find information and work together to see the participants, to see the documents that will be published, and use that in our favor.
Just complementing what Renata is mentioning, it is a little bit unfortunate that the working group that is developing the guideline is a closed group. So I do not know if we will really ever have an opportunity to learn what countries are actively participating in it. But the conversations that have been held in the IMDRF meetings are really very positive. And I think they have heard the need of the countries to have a practical tool to implement, because Good Reliance Practices Guideline produced by the World Health Organization, it is just like that. It is a high-level document. And what we have constantly been listening is that regulators are struggling on how to turn that into specific actions at their country level. And we know that this is not an easy task, because that depends on the regulatory framework or the legal framework that is available in the countries that may allow for a simple pathway to implement, or in some instances might require legal changes, and that require Congress approvals, and then that means a long time for that to happen. But it is really critical for regulators to clearly understand, coming from such an authority as IMDRF is, an authority meaning on the value of what they are producing, to get those guidelines and try to help them further implement. Yes, we know the intention is for that to be published in 2025. And whenever we learn anything about that, any update on that, of course, we will let everybody know.
Thank you,
And
Sandra.
just for everybody to know, I just included in the chat box the link to the standard operating procedure of the IMDRF as well, just in case you didn't have a chance to look at the Q&A. Now it is available in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. And we have one more question from Andre Gavan. Andre, I don't know if you want to say it out loud, if you are with your mic open. If not, I can read it. You asked a lot of questions, so maybe you can participate. No, doesn't seem like. So Andre says, I like also the quote, a good practice policy must be good for all stakeholders. And the question is how we can bring more value to local manufacturers regarding adoption of Reliance practices. And if you want to elaborate on that.
Sandra, your presentation in Mexico was related to that, right?
And we think, and thank you very much. And that is also something that was discussed at the IMDRF meeting in September. And we directly asked this question to Anvisa, because we know that some countries, some local manufacturers are challenging the regulatory authorities because they perceive this like an uneven way to treat importers as compared to local manufacturers. And the truth is, as Anvisa just presented themselves, is we are going to be releasing resources that are currently dedicated to full revision of filings from importers, and they're going to become available to take care of local manufacturers. But on the other side, local manufacturers will end up benefiting out of having their products available in the markets in a faster pace. Their business is going to be better. And at the end of the day, that will also allow for them to develop capabilities as to turn to be exporters of those products that they're locally manufacturing. So at the end of the day, it is going to be very relevant for transparency from the national regulatory authorities on how the implementation of Reliance is really helping not only importers, but also local manufacturers. But in theory, that is what it should be happening. Local manufacturers should also be benefiting at least at the same level as importers because, again, of resources being available to deal with their submissions. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe one last question from my side would be, I'm picking up from what Renata said about how we still need to educate our regulatory agencies when we see they think they have a reliance structure just because they take one document from another agency. And we also see frameworks for regulatory pathways that do mention reliance in the wording, but we still do not see the implementation in practical examples. So maybe for me, it would be good to hear from you, what can we do when we see these kind of things? I mean, when we see an agency that has a reliance framework, but it's not properly in place.
What we were discussing, Roberta, on the group, and I mentioned, so there is no solution for all the countries. So Anvisa, they published the regulation and everyone is still saying that it was not implemented yet, not working well. They want to reduce the amount of documents. So we should analyze data, times, and go back to them, specifically to Anvisa. Mexico, they were saying that they recognize some documents, but reliance does not work properly, and we have to work in specific. There is no way to do this for the entire region because of maturity level, because the ways they believe they are doing reliance, and because we have some regulations, some pathways already established, and other that just have the word, as you mentioned. So we have to analyze data and back to them.
And if I may complement, I think, again, we have a huge opportunity when new regulations or updates to regulations are open, because that is when we have to go back and challenge, of course, with technical arguments, with technical rationale, whenever they are not, or into what extent they are including reliance. And that is coming from the regulatory impact assessment. There is no way that it could be more cost effective for a regulator to do 1, 2, 3, or 100 steps that are required to approve a product as to do 1, 2, or 3. I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be a demonstration, of course, on a risk-based approach in regards of into what extent they would be deciding to rely on the decisions made by others, why they cannot rely on the decisions made by others, on the analysis made by others. Again, everything based on a risk-based approach. And in that regard is how we can really influence them to get into the furthest possible extent of implementation of Reliance. This is a step-by-step process. This is not going to be happening overnight. And for that to happen, as Renata was mentioning, we need to continue to develop capacities. We need to help them change their paradigms, to help them understand how they are moving the way they apply their authority and their responsibility from one side to the equation to the other, and that they are not losing that they're not losing sovereignty, that they are really going to continue to have that, but they're going to be in a much better position to respond to their legal obligations and to their ethical obligations with patients, while allowing a more effective way for them to gain access to safe, quality, and performing to design medical devices. And Gabriela, sorry, you have your hand raised.
No, I couldn't agree more, Sandra. So thinking in all the discussion and maybe it's something that we can work, and I don't know in the rest of the country, but I'm not sure if every country have the same way to do impact analysis, if they even know how to do impact analysis, regulatory impact analysis. I mean, so if they don't know how to do it, it's hard they apply it. I'm not sure, even if in my case, if they know how to do it. So it's something that we can explore. I don't know the rest of the region, but it will be something that, as we did in the past, to start from the basis. Because one of the bases is if you don't know how to do it, we cannot expect they will do it. That's it. Thank you.
This is true. And one more comment. So I try to put myself in their shoes too. So when I was trying to find the products in the other regulators' website, it was a nightmare. So I couldn't find my products. So can you imagine a regulator trying to find a product approved in other websites? So in FDA, Health Canada, Japan, and other authorities. So it's hard to them. So it's our obligation, and this is the conversation. So I started this conversation with Anvisa. So this is something that or we could provide to them. So here is the way you will find this approval for my product. So go to the website and find my product this way. Or this is something we have to teach them on how to do the search in an easily way, because they're spending much more time doing that than other things. So we are trying to save their time, and we are asking them to go to the website to check. And they are worried about the sameness. So if they go to the website and they cannot see the codes that are approved, how they will trust in that information? So it's hard to them. So we have a lot of things to accommodate in order to move through Reliance. So even the way they publish the information could be in a more standardized way. Why not?
And Renata, I think, yesterday Patricia proposed, and of course we're going to be taking her word for that, to develop a webinar just to go over the websites of the regulators, and to go over the challenges, as Renata was mentioning, sameness. And you probably remember that our initial idea for the engagement with external stakeholder session for this November was in regards of sameness. But we had several issues because agendas for WHO, PAHO, Canada were very, very hectic. But definitely we're planning to have that done. Ideally, that is going to be March next year, when we are expecting for the guideline from IMDRF to already be published, to have better understanding on the challenges that the regulators are facing while implementing Reliance, getting into all the details of how to better manage the databases that are available. Of course, posing our proposal for a standard way for regulators to produce and publish their data, and of course on sameness. So those are things that are with us that we have in the agenda for future webinars. And sorry, we have Stephen first and then Sergio. Roberta, back to you.
Yes,
Thank you,
Stephen,
Sandra.
please.
Okay, thank you. Just in response to Gabriela's point on regulatory impact assessments, RIA. So if there's a desire of the authorities to have and receive training, we certainly have the technical experts that can do that, both from the public as well as private sector. That's one. Two, I think regulators like conducting regulatory assessments about as much as I like doing my expense reports, which is to say not too much, but it's something we need to do. For example, even under the MDRC project or any project, there's always the question of what amount of the available funding should you use on your reporting. And although it seems ridiculous, the professional rule of thumb is even if you spent 90% of your funding on reporting and only 10% on the actual training, although that seems like a huge waste, if you're not doing the reporting, you have no mechanism to know whether you're improving anything. So if you're not conducting the regulatory impact assessment, the regulator has no mechanism to know whether it's actually addressing, whether it's identified the right problem and whether it's fixing the problem that's been properly identified. So that's why we work to implement foundational good regulatory practices domestically, but then also lock them in as trade obligations. And so that, as the leadership changes from year to year and government to government within the agencies, it's an institutional requirement and not just at the will and whim and extra time and resources of the regulatory authorities. And so, and maybe two cases to point. You've got Brazil, which is, strong rule of law and has these whole of government decrees and requirements now on regulatory impact assessment as a part of broader GRP. Mexico has it on paper, but they've been drifting away from the requirement, and COFEPRIS has been spending a lot of its time asking for waivers to get out from having to conduct the regulatory impact assessment, which ends up being a lot more work for them. But all to say, if there's a desire in Chile or other places of the authorities to have training on RIA, we'd be happy to look at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Steven. Sergio, please.
I want to go back to this case of the authorities to localize the registration dossier and approval in the other agency. Of course, it be good that we promote this educational environment to show to each authority how to locate product number, code number, part number, and anything else. But I think that it will be easier if each company, when submit the dossier, they put in one page all the links for the approval for the product in each country with each authority. Each company can follow their own product in many different authorities in the world. If I want to submit to Anvisa, it's easier to show to Anvisa, look, this is the link. You click here, you will see our product registered. It's a task from each company in the dossier.
Thank you, Dr. Sergio, for this suggestion. It's something that we consider. However, it's not that simple because we have some companies that they create codes specific per each region due to traceability. We have other that change the name of the products. So when we go to the sameness, how to prove that the product is the same. So those are the things we are still trying to understand to connect the dots to support them.
Thank you very much for the question in the Q&A regarding the Reliance Training Deck. Maybe the GMTA paper can be useful here. It's anonymous, the question, so I don't know who needs it, but you can reach out to us and we can share the document with you. So if there's no more questions, we can move to the following presentation. That is Renata again. So that's easy. It's about free sale certificates and electronic free sale certificates and apostille. So Renata, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So the other group that I was responsible for, it was related to the CFG and CFS, the electronic version. So when we start the group, we had two key strategies: the acceptance of electronic CFS and CFG, and also to remove the requirement when possible. So those were the roadmap, the tasks that we had on the roadmap. So the members would know the position papers that were available. We tried to leverage the position paper from local trade associations, from the one that we had in the coalition. So we defined some action plan and timelines. We defined if extra support would be necessary. So we scheduled some activities and meetings and to align with all the members of the group. We discuss and we monitor the milestones, and then the outputs would be the document, position paper to influence, its regulation, and trade association doing the main influence on the regulators. So what we had here, so I bring to the history because I don't know if everyone is on the group on the discussion since the beginning. So the free sale requirement, it was established in 1970. So of course, the way we had at that moment was a physical document with a stamp, with a signature that proved that the product was being commercialized in other country and could be commercialized in the country we are trying to register. But with the transformation, the digital transformation we have in the world, so now this document is available in the websites. So we can go to the website and check if a product is approved or not. So on January this year, FDA started to issue all the CFGs in an electronic version. And many countries in Latin America were not used to that format. So it was a kind of panic moment at that time because they didn't know how to address the situation, because they had a QR code that would show the document. And it was not so simple to scan the QR code and check the veracity of the document. But then things are going better after a few months. So just bring some concepts here. We have the apostille that is due to the Hague Convention. So we can have the document apostille because of the Hague Convention, or we have the traditional legalization process and some sword translation. So those are the requirements that are still having some country regulations. So asking a document, asking a legalization or apostille, and sometimes ask for a sword translation, principal if the document's not English or Spanish. So if it's another language, we have to provide this translation. So this is the document I'm talking about, the electronic version. So this is not a CFG, it's a CFS. But so you have to scan it here to check the signature and to check the veracity of the document. And there is kind of some pop-ups to open when you are on your computer to check the veracity of the document. And the people that were, the technicians that were analyzing our submissions, they're spending some time because they have to check the veracity of the document. It was much simpler to have the printed version or the one submitted electronic and just check that the document was there. And now they have some steps to check the document. So at the beginning it was difficult, but now they are more used to that. But we are still having some countries that are printing the document to be present. We cannot forget that. So from the initiative, so we mapped the impact per country. So since January, so we had the informal approach with regulator to understand if they are aware and how it would impact their regular process. And the answer was no one was worried about this regular process. Why? Because we could keep printing the document. We are still printing sometimes. So there is no impact, not because we are used to the electronic format. No, it's because in some countries we keep printing. With trade association, so we evaluated the topic inside the trade association. It was a common issue, and we analyzed. We understand the coalition position paper. We started the conversation with MOHs. We refined a survey to better understand the real impact. We work on questions to be addressed with legal, so to see if we are addressing the issue, and understand the requirements of each country. So we create a kind of macro and personalize the strategy according to the country maturity level, and provide training to regulators. We train all the regulators? No, some of them. So when they had doubts, we teach them how to check the document, but was not provide a real training, a massive training with the information to them. And now the other thing that we are supposed to do is, when possible, try to influence with government affairs, because sometimes much more political influence than a regulatory one. So the survey, so we put the topic, we did through trade association, and we asked if they were aware that the physical document will not be issued. So the impact, if the regulation of the country was ready for that, and if we could receive without printing, we try to be very specific, and if it was acceptable. And is there any regulation that prevent the acceptance of electronic CFG or electronic apostille? So we received it. So these were the results. Much more answers from Brazil and Colombia. The other ones were split into American countries. Others because it was from Canada and US, and so we were not considering here. So when we asked if there is regulation that prevents the acceptance, 12% said yes, but there is no clear regulation saying that they do not accept the electronic version. You know, there is regulation saying that you must present in a physical way, but does not prevent. So wording could be analyzed when you go with legal. They say that we have opportunities here. The countries that requires the CFG legalized, those are the countries, almost all the key ones that we are doing business here. So, and of course, Brazil requires, but it's not here because for class 1 and 2, you don't have to provide. And today, the next steps, what we have today and the future steps. So countries get used to electronic version, or they keep printing it locally to upload in the website or to presenting. Sometimes in public tenders, they have to present it physical. It was created a work instruction how to find the product approved in MDSAP countries. I showed to you. So we created this work instruction. We created the cover letter showing the reasons the coalition is working on it. And Anvisa already received this work instruction and they are analyzing it. So I believe next week or by the end of this month, they will provide the feedback on the documents. And then based on their feedback, we'll be able to share with other regulators and to build a position paper to go to other regulators. Why I bring Brazil here? Because Brazil, in vitro regulation, they don't have to present the CFG or CFS anymore. And we have for class 1 and 2 medical device that we don't have to present, and the ones that requires in metro certification that we don't have to present. So we have a big opportunity here. So we could start as a pilot, as the conversation with Karen, I had a conversation with Karen, and she mentioned that we could start as with a pilot for the ones that are part of the Reliance group. So Reliance, we don't have to present the CFG, CFS. So we could have some initiatives and then move to the other countries. And here, was all how we planned it and where we are. So we analyze all the position papers, we understand the impact, we map it per country, the requirements, if they were aware the electronic version. Here is 2024, sorry. We did a survey. we did a survey, we defined a strategy to influence. So at the beginning, we were worried about the small countries, because when we have small countries, the companies, they don't want to stop and work on the document, spend the time and money to do the document for small countries. So at the beginning, we tried to focus on the small countries, but they were not so open to that. So then we moved the strategy to the big one. So Anvisa was open to receive that, and we approached Anvisa. So we are working a document to support regulators to find the approvals. Now, map the countries that we need to map the countries that would be open to remove the need of CFS and CFG. So we have to do this mapping. And what I put here, because I don't believe we will find this year, and with government affairs, because some of the initiatives, they are more than a regulator initiative, they are country, because to recognize the reciprocity of an international document, the law of the country requires apostille or legalization. So this is the reason government affairs sometimes must support. In some countries, the requirement, it's like in Brazil, it's from Anvisa, and they can remove the requirements. They cannot remove the apostille or legalization, but they can remove the need of present that certificate. Some other countries we identify that is the same, but some of the other, it's not. So we have to go to the country law to do this, and then to have the influence outcomes. So in the beginning, we imagined that we would have the outcomes this year, and it was much more work, and we didn't have the outcomes this year. So I'm sorry about that. We are still having some work to do here to have the outcome of this group. So open for questions here.
Thank you, Renata. Do we have any comments? There's nothing in the Q&A. I guess we don't. So thank you very much, Renata, for this presentation and for everything done for both working groups. It's been an amazing year, and you did a lot of work, so congratulations on that. So let's move forward to the following presentation. We are behind schedule, so I get the message from Leticia that we are going to skip the break, and we are moving forward with the next presentation that it's about EIFU. I see Sheni online, so whenever you are ready, Sheni.
Your mic is closed again.
I think we need support with her microphone, right? Maybe Pamela, if you can unmute her.
Yes.
Hi everyone, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we see you and we hear you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, team. Thank you for bringing the opportunity to share what we have worked in this working group. I am leading the working group regarding EIFU strategies to implement it as a general practice. Okay, our working group problem statement is that in some countries in Latin America, regulators do not accept EIFU. However, it is a trend for most of our companies. Our main objective is to provide documents, a position, and a strategy for each country to advocate for EIFU adoption in each country. Okay, our general strategy was focused on understand how is the state of the art in the international landscape, as well as to understand how is the state of the art in our countries, and identify which are the challenges perceived by the health authorities. It is something that we discussed that will be different because we know that some countries already have advanced with some strategies for with some advocacy strategies to request the implementation of EIFU, but in some countries we have received negative response by the regulators, with some argues that we are using here in our working group, trying to move forward with the acceptance. And finally, we are working very hard trying to address those concerns to have a final position. So to start sharing what we have raised or what we have built, we have in an international state, we have some countries that already accept EIFU for some medical devices. This is the first group of products. We have a second group of products that have the second group of countries that have acceptable to the products that are specific for healthcare professionals. And we have a third group of countries that allows to use EIFU in all the products. The analysis of this information represent that most of the countries that we analyze internationally are focused on acceptance of EIFU at a healthcare professional level or some types of risk classification of products. In most of the countries of reference or in any reference country, it is allowed the EIFU for lay user products, okay? So if we move forward with to the LATAM landscape, we classify the countries in 5 groups, depending on the state that they have now. We have some changes or some countries that you can find in purple, for instance, countries that already issue a draft that include EIFU, but those draft has not been become in a final regulation, so we need to wait for the final publication to understand if EIFU was considered or not. And we also have some countries in red. For those countries, we have 2 options. We need to reassess the classification that we have because we have, in some cases, a new perspective of new team members in the working group that disagree with the classification that we did in the beginning. And we have the case of Paraguay, for instance, that they issue a final regulation for medical devices, and it seems that EIFU is allowed now. So having this in mind, we have the groups of countries are organized from the most complex situation to the less complexity. So the first group of countries, we have those countries in which the regulation indicates that the EIFU must be provided physically with the products. It means a bit regulatory restrictions because we have, for those countries, it is expected that we need or depend on a modification of the regulation to have any advance. In those countries, we have Colombia for the IVD regulation. We have we have Mexico, Paraguay for medical devices regulation, and Peru. The good news for this group of countries is that Colombia is developing a new regulation, so it is a good time to advocate for the change of the regulation regarding EIFU. Mexico already released a draft, and the draft also include EIFU as an option. Paraguay already released a new regulation, and it seems that the regulation allows implement EIFU. And Peru also issue a draft of a regulation that at this time it is under consultation. What we understand is that EIFU will be allowed. So we have, despite those countries are the most difficult, we have a good perspective because they are all in changes of regulation. The second group of countries are the countries that does not mention EIFU release. And in some cases, we have some countries that already have issue some notes or consultations in which they say that EIFU is allowed. What is the challenge here? That for the team is critical to have this in a formal document, because when it depends on the government, on the time, or on the officers that issue a concept, we have the susceptibility to change this concept by another new officials or governments. So in this group, we have most of the Central American countries. We have also Argentina. This is a country that we need to reassess because some member of the working group disagree with this classification. And we also have Bolivia. We also have the third group of countries. In these countries, we have a regulation that allows to use EIFU, but the regulators don't feel comfortable to replace paper IFU by EIFU. So for these countries, we have a good perspective because we have a good regulatory framework. However, we need to advocate with the regulators to change the interpretation they are doing with the regulation. Here we have Colombia for medical devices and Ecuador. Ecuador is another country that we need to reassess based on the feedback of some members to define which is the real state of them. We have a fourth group. In this group, we have countries that already accept EIFU. Those countries we need to understand. For instance, here we have Brazil. And when we start working with Brazil, Brazil had some restriction for products that were used by healthcare professionals. Now, in the beginning of the year, they issue a regulation that allow EIFU for all the products, most of the products used by healthcare professionals, but it is still pending to understand. It is under discussion, and it was included in the agenda of this year to discuss a little bit about the allowance or EIFU for lay users products. And Chile, we have Chile here classified in this group because EIFU is allowed for the products that are regulated, but this country is not fully regulated. So the request of the people from Chile is that we should keep the country here to advocate for the new regulation to include EIFU. And finally, there is the good country is Paraguay. This is the last group in which there is no action required. For IBDs, it is allowed to have EIFU. Okay, moving forward with the second topic that we have discussed, we review some position papers that some trade associations were working on. As well as we also review a position paper that MedTech Europe issue to understand and to identify the advantage that we have using EIFU. So I don't read about the advantage. I think we have enough documentation about it. So I would like to focus on the challenge perceived by the health authorities because this is the big focus that we are working on. in our working group. So here, based on the feedback of the team members, we identify or classify the health authority concerns in mainly 4 topics. The first one is the internet connection and permanent access to the EIFUs. The second topic is that health authorities feel that users won't feel comfortable using EIFU. The third point is that they are concerned about how we could address the EIFU control version in digital form. And finally, they ask how we could ensure that if a user is not comfortable, or if the user don't want to use EIFU, how to provide the paper IFU. So having those topics on mind, we move forward with trying to solve each of one. So to start, we did an analysis about the internet connection. We use the information from the World Bank. This is information regarding internet penetration data. Internet penetration data is a measure of the people that could access to internet in the country. As you can see in the graphic, we also include some reference countries in purple, just to have a guidance how we are in against the reference countries. And we found that there are good penetration of internet in some countries. However, mainly in Central America, we have big challenges because we are talking in penetration below 70%. It means that we have, or that we could have around 30% of the population that can access to the internet. So also taking from World Bank, we have a comparison among internet in urban areas versus internet in rural areas. So we have that we have a gap in the rural areas for internet penetration. It could represent a risk for us to advocate for lay user products, because it is not easy to say that we could cover all the country with the EIFU for those zones in which internet is not available. So having this information, our conclusion and what we decide to use this information is that despite internet connection is a challenge in some countries, this is the reality of the healthcare systems. Yeah, this is how our healthcare systems works. So it should then represent a challenge to implement EIFU, having in mind that those challenges are already available in the healthcare system. The second point that we discussed is that healthcare institutions usually are located in main cities in which internet connection is available in most of the cases. So we are trying to get more data if it is possible, but to be honest, it was a little challenging. If there is any data that could connect internet penetration and the distribution of the internet in the country, just to identify if it is possible to demonstrate that healthcare institutions have internet in most of the case. As well as I will mention later, we are addressing a survey for healthcare professionals, and in this survey we are also including a question regarding internet, just trying to demonstrate that internet is not an issue for adopting EIFU. And finally, the other conclusion is that these data could represent a risk or a challenge for us to defend lay user products. EIFU in lay user products. Okay, the second topic that we are discussing is that users don't feel comfortable with EIFU. This is a perception of the health authority. However, we don't have enough data and we don't know how is the perception of the final users of the products regarding having instruction for use in an electronic way. Considering it, our decision was to move forward with a survey that will be released to the healthcare professionals. And the focus of the survey is trying to get information and trying to get data, how the users perceive or how are the preference of the healthcare professionals using in EIFU and paper IFU. I have here, like in the table, like a little summary of the methodology. It is just one slide, but this slide have and the team know that we have had many meetings to discuss and to have a final version of the survey and the strategy and all the things. But what we want to share is that we will release this survey to healthcare professionals. The reason that we don't include lay user patients is that it could be very complex to contact all the patient associations trying to get information. So for this first round, we are trying to focus this survey in healthcare professionals. The second point is that it is important that you know is that the scope of the survey will be Latin countries in general, but we exclude Brazil, considering that for Brazil it is already allowed to have EIFU for products that go to healthcare professionals, so it doesn't make sense to release the survey there. We will distribute this survey through the coalition, and for this we capture the information about the professional associations to have proper contacts for each country. And finally, the questions are really focused on the preference of the healthcare professionals, trying to understand how they perceive the migration and how they use currently the IFUs to understand if they prefer to have paper or electronic versions. In the middle of the activities that we have done, we have a survey that was approved by the working group. This survey was released internally to the healthcare professionals into the companies to have a pilot to understand if the information was clear, if the questions were pertinent, and if the questions were clear. So having the feedback of the people that participate in the pilot, we made a final adjustment to the survey before releasing it. And it is important that you know that this survey we use the same strategy that MedTech Europe use to present a request to the regulator to extend EIFU for all the products used by healthcare professionals. We use this survey as a guidance, but now it is important that you know that European Union and TGA in Australia, they also are releasing surveys for the healthcare professionals to understand the perception and the position of them regarding EIFU adoption. So we are connecting we are connecting with the things that happen around the world. So our questions match too much with the European Union survey. So it is a good point and a good opportunity to defend our survey in the future. So, moving forward with the next topic, we also discussed about EIFU version control, considering that we have to cover two scenarios. The first one is the country that in which IFU versions or changes require approval by health authorities, and the countries that do not require approval. Yeah. So this represents a challenge because we will have a timing delays in some countries. In those countries which depends on an approval, we will have a later release of the EIFU version, and we try to understand how we could address this concern by the health authorities, because for each country it will be different. So finally, we try to put examples, but we don't want to put just one example that will be like a rule for all the companies, because each company has the own procedures and the own ways to control the versions. So for that reason, we pretend to put an argue focus on the QM system, just to ensure that each company must be align the procedures to control EIFU versions. And finally, the last topic is the mechanisms to provide paper IFU in case that it is required by the users. In this case, the initial proposal that we discussed is that the companies should have a service line for the customers to ask for the paper IFU. However, we are not sure that this strategy will work with all the companies, for all the companies. So our decision was to discuss a little bit more about this option. So this is in progress, in progress discussion. Finally, I have here like a schedule of the next step and the things that we are working on. So we have here, as you see, we are working in main concern of health authorities, the 4 topics that I already present. So despite we have not released the survey, we expect to complete this activity by this month. And we will wait for the responses to understand the data and to analyze the data. And as well as we pretend to work in parallel in other topics while the survey is running, to have a final deliverables in the first Q of 2025. I hope that we can. It's a big challenge, but I think that fortunately we have had many engagement in this working group, and thank you to all the attendance of this working group, because this is a teamwork. We are building this as a group. Many participants has put the input and many people has been involved. So this is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and congratulations for all the work done. This is a very active working group. You have many meetings, and the discussions are always great. So are the deliverables that you shared. Just one comment for you to consider for the next meeting. We learned from a new regulation in Uruguay for registration. So maybe this is something that we should add in the list of regulations that we monitor to be sure that e-label is stated in this new regulation. So let's see if there's any comments or questions. No in the Q&A, no comments in the chat box. Josely, how are you?
Just a comment. Here in Brazil, point of care tests still require printed use instruction. And this, for me, it's linked to the confusion. What is really a point of care is if point of care, it's a in-home test. And but we are working in order, because there is no sense to have just point of care tests that require of printed version of the IFO. Okay.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Yes, I know the challenge here is that point of care is a very, I think maybe a very small group of products. And this is the challenge why we did not consider to include them, to include Brazil in the survey, but I understand your point. Thank you.
Sandra?
And I also have a comment that is not specific to this topic, but just for what you mentioned, Roberta. There's a new regulation being issued by Uruguay. There's no notification to TBT. That is exactly the same situation that we have in Peru right now. 2 regulations, open consultation, domestic only, no notification to the TBT. So I think we'll probably have to develop a working group to get us like full speed into how to quickly respond and act when we have situations like this. So just for us to bear in our minds that there are opportunities for us to take advantage of, I mean, not to take advantage, but to try to tackle in a timely manner whenever part of the GRP process is not properly followed, and to take advantage of that tool available to us to make sure that whenever some of our rationale is not accepted throughout the domestic consultation because of whatever reason, either technical or political, we still have a place to share those concerns, to include the scientific, technical rationale for those. And again, do not miss an opportunity for us to positively influence the regulations, because at the end of the day, that is what we are committed to positively influence whatever new regulation is going to be available to facilitate access to medical devices. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. It's a great comment. I think we may make a working package together with the regulatory assessment that we were talking before. So we have both the regulatory assessment and also the commenting part. Gabi?
I know we are behind time, so a very few, just a comment coming back to the point of Sandra. One of the first things that we should all of us be is to read EPIN, because if you see a local regulation and you don't see it in EPIN, then a red flag has to be flow up. That's it.
Thank you, Gabi. So if we do not have any comments or questions, check the chat box. No, we aren't. So we are ready for our next presentation, skipping our break. It would be you, Gabi, with your working group update. Are you ready?
Yes, just let me share. You can see my presentation?
Not yet.
Do you want? I can share my screen. Do you want, Gabriela?
It will be easy. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Leticia.
Welcome. Just a second, please.
Just in regarding the time, first of all, I have to recognize that we didn't meet a lot, and we did have some issues in trying to coordinate agenda. It's not easy, We start with a lot of energy after the last meeting, but as the time was going on, the time was more complex. The last meeting that we have, we realized that not only companies to be involved, also trade association need to be involved. So we can move to the forward. So just remember, our group is working in non-standard. It's working in the standards to be part of the committees that are already in the country, to the mid-road committees that should be in the countries regarding international standards or technical norm in the proper traduction. So next one. So just this was our objective, to develop a gap analysis of each of the country and try to understand why countries were or not were participated. So I think we are moving forward in the gap analysis, but we still have to do work in the participation. Even there are some countries participating already. So if we can move forward. Just to remember why this is important, because all that we have been talking in this meeting, if we don't align from the basis, and norm standard are the basis. So this is the first step to have a good regulatory practice and to have alliance all over the countries. So we need to be there and we need to participate, because if we don't do it, then when we try to do it later on, it's harder, because standards are the base for good regulatory or for alignment. So next. And the way that the international bodies work are they all have international stakeholder, and they all have the committees, local committees. So as example, ISO, every single ISO do have some committees. Sometimes they don't have open it, or sometimes they are not interested, but there is the role of the industry to be involved in that, to ask and to request to participate, especially in the one that we believe they're important for the country and for the region. So maybe here we have some challenge to understand where we want to be, and also how we participate, because I have a key 3 committees, but there are a lot more. And of course, we have lots of resources, so it's hard to be in all of them. So we may have to prioritize, but we have to be in contact with the local organization that take care of the the local body international representative. Next one, please. So here, just to remember, I'm not going deeper in this, is which country are participating in each of the committees. So you can be aware, ISO 210, that is mainly medical device. We have Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, Mexico, and United States as a participate members, and as observatory, there is a list there in 214 that is very important one right now, because it's telemedicine and all what is regarding to telemedicine. We have Brazil, Argentina, but also we have another observatory countries, and 212 is is IDV mainly, and we do have a lot of countries that some of them are in the region, some of them are not. And also we have the participating, the observatory members. So as an example, even in 215, Chile was not an observatory member. Now, because of the importance of telemedicine at the country, we are an observatory member as a country, and we are participating. So next. So by now, where we are, so Argentina is participating through company members in the local standard, the local representative of ISO and others. In Brazil, we understand, and you can correct me if I am wrong, that ABIMO is the one that is participated, not all the trade association. Colombia is participated in Incotec, and also Marisol is part of the board. Also, she asked me to give hers apology, because she was not able to join this meeting. And Mexico is the government, the one that is in the committee, and there has been not easy to get there. So I know they have been working and trying, but not easy to get in the institute, the equivalent in Mexico. And there is a challenge there. We are still going to work with Ana. And in the case of Chile, we are now very close related with ENN, that is the representative of ISO and other standard committees. And we did participate in the last ISO 215, and we do have a Chilean quality norm for telemedicine, that it became a Chilean norm, not because we are disaligned with the ISO 13131, it's because the translation was so hard that we need to have a Chilean norm. There are some English terms that are not easy to make the translation to Spanish, and that makes the changes. So that is what I have to share. I don't have anything more. If any other country has interest, please let me know. I know I have new participants from companies that want to join our working group. So I compromise myself that as soon as I can, I will retake the group working with them, including them. That's it, Renata.
Thank you, Gabi, and we appreciate your efforts given Chile's background currently. I know there's a lot for you, so we appreciate all your efforts in this working group. Do we have any comments or questions, Steven?
Thank you, Gabriela, for the helpful update. And I don't think anyone on this call doubts or wonders why we have this working group, but maybe just to reinforce the importance of it and the linkages to the broader effort. So as we've talked about before, and as we know, it's an international treaty obligation of the 166 members now of the WTO for all regulators, including medical device regulators, to use international standards as a basis for national technical regulations and conformity assessment. And through the MDRC project and the work that the coalition has conducted, we know that the majority of one of the biggest trade barriers between countries is regulatory non-alignments. And I would say the majority of those regulatory alignments derive from A, the country not having good regulatory practices in place, including regulatory impact assessment and public consultation, and B, not using the relevant international standard. And I know that for many of us, it's easy to think, as the expression goes in China, the sky is high and the emperor is far away. It's easy to think that ISO and IEC are, two buildings in Geneva, but they are us, just like the coalition is us, and just like the GMTA is us. And each of our countries has a member body to ISO and IEC. And most of us in some way, either as a PRO member, are participating. And so, for example, I myself am not engaged on any technical committees, but I know that many of our members are. And I do try and maintain a strong relationship with the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, which is the US member body to ISO and IEC. In fact, they had an award dinner last night here in Washington, and I attended, and I had a very nice side conversation with Scott Colburn of FDA, who's the chair of TC 210. And so it doesn't have to be strictly committee work, but you maintaining a relationship in one way or another with the standards body. And I would encourage that be done between your MedTech associations and the standards body, but also your respective member companies. And I know I've mentioned this before, so sorry to beat a dead horse, as the expression goes, but I often hear from the member companies say, well, my local person in country X isn't the technical expert. So it's difficult for them to participate on the committee. But I think my and our suggestion is, even if that is the case, please have your team sign up to participate on the committees, even if virtually, and minimally, so that you're receiving the documents of the committee and aware of what's being voted on. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get your way, but it's guaranteed not to get your way if you're not there at all. And as the other expression goes, when the cat's away, the mice will play. If you're not there at the table, you're either at the table or on the menu, right? So even from a defensive perspective, you'd want to be there so that when the time comes to vote on what ISO and IEC are working on and what gets adopted as a national standard, when that vote comes, your interests are represented, both your local association and even in your member companies, just to reinforce that link. Thanks.
Just a comment based on experience. We were in this committee creating the quality norm of telemedicine, and our Minister of Health representative, it was trying to change the definition of ISO 901 because they don't know and they don't understand. So if, as Stephen is saying, if you are not present, every single mess that we may live in regulatory start there. Is the basis, the very basic, because they don't know what technical standards really means. They don't know how to do it. Besides, the other component of the body, because the body is not only the body. The body has the Minister of Health, has the regulatory agencies, has the academy. If we are supposed to be there, but if we are not, are these other people. The technical committee only take the comment from the people that is participating, and the votes and all that is made by the participation, not made only by the body. So if we are not there and our Minister of Health and our regulatory agency and any other representative is there, well, nobody goes know what is going to get away from that committee. And that's the problem. Sandra and Stephen, thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. And I think I'm just going to be reinforcing what you're saying. We are all okay whenever an international standard is adopted by a country. We are in big trouble when they start adapting. And just an example from Mexico, GMP regulation, all the deviations from ISO 13485 are coming from the experience of personnel working in COFEPRIS. Where is the documentation of that experience? Where is the hard data supporting their argument to misalign? It is non-existent. So that is kind of like the same type of thing. And just adding one more thing, we have all agreed that language can be a barrier. And we have only 4 P members, Spanish-speaking members, that are allowed to vote to decide whenever a translation is going to be performed for a particular standard. If we do not have all the 4, then that is not approved. We need to have more PIN members incorporated in the technical committees. Otherwise, we are at a risk of whenever an effort to translate a standard is decided to be performed, that is not going to happen. And it just happened to us because Mexico, it's a PIN member that was the missing vote. It took months for Mexico to finally issue the vote, but we were about to lose the opportunity to have one more standard in Spanish. Thank you. Stephen.
And just building on that, Gabriela, back on your slide as to who's active in the countries. In Brazil, ABIMO is the convener, the ABNT designated convener of CB26. But SBAC is the ABNT designated convener of CB36 for diagnostic. That's the Sociedade Brasileira de Análises Clínicas. And then in Mexico, indeed, Dirección General de Normas is part of the Secretaría de Economía, but they also delegate, I believe, the administration of the working group to ANSE. So, and even in the case of Brazil, where you've got associations that are running the committees, there still should be, between all the coalition members, we would recommend a direct engagement in the working groups. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. I agree. Thank you for your coming back. I understand that for us as a trade association, it's a hard work to do all the work and also to be involved in the details of a body. So what it will be our recommendation if, in the case, as an example, in the case of Victoria, she delegate in companies to be part of it. So we don't have to be only as a trade association, it can be delegated. So I invite company members that are listening today to ask to our trade association how they can be involved and get, and we can be happy to help. Victoria?
We completely agree. We were talking by WhatsApp with Roberta that how to do to involve people to give visibility, to appeal. That's our internal conversation. So you really give the tip. We need it, and it's very interesting. It's a pity. It's a pity we can't participate. So we will do it.
Thank you so much. That's all that I have to present, Roberta. I don't know if there is any question.
No, there's no question in the Q&A and there's no comments. Congratulations for the presentation. Thank you very much. And we move forward with Magdalena and the Open Consultations Working Group. Magda, please.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. Please let me know. Thank you, Roberta. Let me know when you can see my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. I will try to summarize all this working group hard job was performed in this last year. I would first like to thank, because this is a teamwork, I'm only presenting the results, but I want to thank all these team members for their engagement. We have very nice discussions. I would like to thank you for your contributions with materials, with your expertise, and all the collaboration that you brought to this working group. So in this group, we are trying to address and to raise awareness on the importance of industry shaping of regulations. Just to recap, the main objective of this group was to provide support to industry stakeholders on how to gain visibility and how to address open consultations in the region, always following good regulatory practices and seeking harmonization with international standards. That sounds easy, but it's quite a challenge, usually in our countries, in Latin countries. So the idea was to develop some kind of toolkit or guide to support our peers, regulatory peers in our companies. So just to recap very briefly, if you remember, we had our initial discussions scheduled after the El Salvador meeting last year. And by 2024, we had already started the preparation of a survey, making brainstorming, aligning some terminology regarding open consultations. And a hard part of this was to define the scope of this working group, as we realized that we have a very hard work to do ahead. and to also indirectly to educate, as you mentioned in the presentations before, to educate our regional agencies, sanitary agencies. It's quite a challenge. So that was a kind of indirect goal of this working group. As the first deliverable we had by 2020, by May this year, we had already prepared a survey with the objective of screening, which is the current landscape of open consultations in regarding participation of our industry and other topics I will show you later. But and I would like to thank Sandra, Natalie, and Leticia for supporting us on this, because by May we had already the results of this survey, and we're compiling and analyzing this in order to arrive to November with the toolkit almost complete. We are making some final tailoring on this, but with the idea of supporting our peers, our industry peers, to be ready to be that what Sandra also mentioned. We are having these draft consultations in open consultation now, and what we noticed in this survey is that sometimes we as industry are not really prepared to address this. So the idea of this deliverable 2, almost complete, is to have a toolkit at hand for our peers to address open consultations in following good regulatory practices and indirectly educating our regulators. So, as I mentioned, by May this year, we had already the survey prepared, and with the support of Leticia, we deployed the survey through the trade associations and addressed some topics, such as if our peers in the industry were familiar with open consultations, which were their usual sources of information to gain visibility of draft consultations, if they had or not usual participation in domestic and international open consultations from regulatory agencies, the periods, what about what they considered as the transparency of this process, the usual methods for the publication of open consultations in the region, the methods to gain visibility, and finally, by this survey that comprised 15 questions, we tried to address also how to measure the responsiveness of our health authorities regarding the feedback that we as industry give when an open consultation is issued. So very briefly, we had almost 50 replies, and the survey was opened by more than 100 days, so we had enough time for our peers to reply. And I will only show some highlights of the results because it was very extensive. But a surprise really was to know that almost adding domestic plus international and domestic consultations reply, our industry replied that more than 80% of our peers usually participate in open consultations in the region of the Americas. Another result interesting to share was how the regulator usually makes the publication of drafts. Well, one of the most voted replies was through official websites, still official gazettes, and trade associations as well. Highlighting the importance of trade associations, though we know our region is very diverse, and in some countries we don't even have a trade association to represent us, but anyway. And regarding the question on how the industry gains visibility of open consultations, the most voted reply was through trade association again, and periodic checks of official websites. Another interesting result of our survey was to get to know that unfortunately our regulators still doesn't take into account too much the reply and the feedback the industry gives when a draft consultation is issued. So here we also detected another opportunity. With all these results and having the screening of the photo of the current scenario regarding the industry participation in open consultations in the Americas, we started drafting a toolkit to better support our peers, and as I mentioned, indirectly educating our regulators. And one of the things that derived from this survey was that our regulators, as Sandra mentioned, usually forget to use the e-ping system, alert system, though required through the agreements signed. So we split the process of an open consultations in 4 steps. The first one, to how we become aware of the open consultation, then the draft initial assessment of the publication, the third step on how to prepare comments following good regulatory practices and to be better useful or more useful and effective, in which format, for example, to submit the comments to the health authority. And the last step we addressed is how the submission is made to the agency and how we follow up the feedback is taken by the health authorities. So very briefly, because I know that we don't have too much time, just to let you know that for the first step, we prepared an attachment with the instructions for our peers, with a tutorial for them to know how to subscribe to the e-ping alert system, and also a list of the portals where open consultations are usually get published. And then the core of this good toolkit is like a checklist where the idea is to support our industry when we address an open consultation with questions, checklist in the format of a checklist, just like, for example, if is the Asian country signatory to good regulatory practice agreements, to check if the draft was notified via e-ping or not. If not, to tell the health regulatory authority if the deadline for commenting is aligned with good regulatory practice as well. If not, ask for extensions. This is usually missed by our agencies as well. If there is an overlap with domestic or with international regulations, if the regulation is really necessary, if other reliance or recognition pathway is possible, if it is possible or feasible to implement, what is the cost of implementing, in that way to include relevant stakeholders to discuss and see the impact assessment. Well, other topics that are being addressed in this step such as what is the benefit of implementing, if the implementation timeline is feasible, mapping stakeholders to participate, to invite them to participate in the assessment, and to, from this step, recognize and open effective communication channels with the authorities from this step on, for when the opportunity then arrives later, when submissions are already, submission comments are already made, well, to have that communication channel open in order to reach the health authority and have useful discussions. Of course, setting up a follow-up strategy. And for this, to support this step, we develop another attachment. I will show you later on the next slides, to have at hand a useful literature background. As the third step, that is the more, let's say, hands-on step, that is to prepare the comments and to submit the comments. Well, we have another attachment that is Annex 3, where we suggest a table format, as Advamed shared us some time, to better get the regulatory authority know which are the changes, to be clear on which are the changes we propose, highlighting the most relevant points, prioritizing mitigation of risk, effects, negative impacts identified, always seeking alignment with international standards that were you mentioning before, listing positive and negative impacts that were detected on the draft initial assessment, and well, other many. I don't have time enough to tell you all of the checklists, but the idea of this thoughtful toolkit is to review all these good regulatory practices related items in order to better address the open consultation that is a goal opportunity as we have as industry to shape the future of regulations, of medical device regulations in the region. Finally, this toolkit intends to address the part where we ensure compliance with the contribution format as determined by the health authority that promotes the open consultations, to get adherence to the deadline, to seek health authority point of contacts that we should have contacted in step 2, as mentioned, these effective communication channels opened to discuss the feedback on the open consultations, to have a useful discussion. And also to grant feedback and is processed by the health authority really and replied by the health authority. That was one of the opportunities detected in the initial survey. Finally, the following up of the post-public consultation is one of the steps to be checked. So very briefly, these are the 3 attachments prepared by this working group. The first attachment supports the stage of becoming aware with the EPING subscriptions tutorial and the updated list of regulators' web pages by country. The attachment 2 supports the stage of draft initial assessment of the open consultation and has extensive reference background literature on good regulatory practices for our peers to refer, to consult, and to follow. And thank you, Sandra, for your contribution to this. I will show later on how this annex looks like, but it's a very good reference to follow and to ensure that we as industry follow to better shape the regulations. Finally, the third attachment that supports the step of preparing comments is the ADVAMed table format example, along with the directions and instructions on how to complete this table and to submit the comments to the regulator. Very briefly is how the annex looks like. Annex 1, as mentioned, with the list of regulations by country. This is on progress still, with the countries, regulators, and the web page direct link to the where the open consultations are published by our regulators for our peers to have it at hand, along with the American Coalition site with the medical device regulatory authorities links also updated. The tutorial with the e-ping subscription, to receive alerts, to be ready to receive alerts on how to make it, because we noticed that many of us weren't using this channel, and not only authorities, but also we were not aware of this useful tool. The Annex 2 has two parts. The first one is a high-level checklist to follow in each of these 3 phases of the process of open consultations, following the WTO TBT checklist summary prior to the start of the open consultation, during the open consultation, and after the open consultation process. So I won't get into detail of this, but this is how the practical checklist item by item looks like, as reference, as an example on how to address the step 2, the stage 2 of the open consultation, the impact assessment. And finally, the format and the directions suggested that we consider is the most useful and effective format to submit comments to the health authority, where we suggest to strike through the parts of the text we want to be removed, to underline the text we want to be added, and a simple format, but ready to understand for health, easy to understand for health authorities on this format, like statement, which is the statement, what we suggest should be replaced for, and which is our rationale, and how to provide this rationale, always with background international standards and aligned with terminology of international and global harmonization standards. All of this is in detail indicated in our toolkit. So very high level, that's the progress our working team has prepared up for now. So thank you very much for all the team members. I think that we have a golden opportunity to challenge this toolkit right now, as Sandra mentioned, with the Peruvian draft regulations, and now with this new Uruguay also public consultation. So I hope that this is to be a useful, finalized to be a useful resource for our peers, and still on progress, but almost completed. So thank you very much, all of the team members. And if you have any questions or comments, very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda, and congratulations for the deliverable. I really like the toolkit that the team has built. I think it's of much help when thinking about commenting and organizing the work, all the work that is done to get good comments for regulation. And I like it very much because it's not only very technical in detail and in deep, but also an overarching and high level approach to the process. It even has the very important question that makes us think if the regulation is even necessary, and then to always seek for international alignment and moving forward and taking from what we have learned in these past 2 days, the regulatory impact assessment at the end of the process will be really nice to have. Well, thank you very much and congratulations again. I see one comment in the chat box. It's from Sandra. Should you have handed the ways our open consultation are published? Congratulations. No, I think we have no questions. We have already shared, this working group has shared with you the toolkit for comments and feedback. I think we received some of them and were implemented already. Correct, Magda, or is there anything pending?
No, what Sandra is saying is that we still are tailoring the annex where I will show with the, I need your input, please, because up to now we have these 3 countries with the direct link to all the open consultation sites from each. So we are any other information from other countries is very welcome. We are still compiling the information to complete this annex.
And yes, I mean, my comment in the chat box was only to take advantage of having all these audience connected. If they do happen to have handy the link to the website where open public consultations are published in their countries, we can take advantage of the chat box and have it live delivered to Magda so she can compile. So from our audience, if you have handy the website, the address to the website where open public consultations are published, we would really appreciate if you can just drop them in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Roberta, also for your contributions to this working group.
Thank you very much. And as we put in the chat box the links, we may move forward to our last presentation that it's about NDSAP, and I see Douglas already connected.
Yes, he is.
I'm over here.
Thank you. The floor is
Great.
yours, Douglas.
Good. So please, well, first, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. Just let me know when you can see my screen so I can start the presentation. Can you see it now?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. So I just want to present a brief update about the work that has been advanced in the NDSAP or the Good Manufacturing Practice working group that is intended to establish and move forward the needle in terms of increasing the NDSAP adoption in the region by the regulatory agencies, or even accepting the certificates of NDSAP, or even by seeking affiliation as affiliate members to the NDSAP program. So let's just quickly recap what is the current situation in the region. Some of you have already seen this statement, but this is the current situation today, that the agencies still are investing a lot of effort and resources to perform the GMP audits validation, and sometimes they are not considering these mechanisms or programs that could provide a benefit not only for the regulators and the industry, but also for the health system. Of course, this generates a negative impact in terms of regulatory agility and brings disruption or potential disruptions to the manufacturers, given the delays in being able to have the audits and get the certifications to moving forward. So the current situation, we're going to see a map later, but this is where we are. I just wanted to bring up quick update on who is participating in NDSAP. So I'm not going to go in detail. I just want to highlight here who are the countries or agencies from Latin America that are part of the program. So we have Brazil as one of the NDSAP founding members. We have Health Canada and US FDA as well, but also we have as affiliate members Argentina and Mexico. And I just want to bring it because maybe some of you were informed or already know that we increased our participation as a region in the INDRF. Recently, there were more members that were accepted as affiliate members, but that doesn't mean automatically that they become affiliate members or members of the MDSAP program. So this is a different program within the INDRF scope, but that's what I wanted to bring as an update and clarify. Then let's just go quickly again to review what is the scope of this working group. So as I mentioned, the idea is that we promote the adoption of NDSAP in the region by the agencies becoming affiliate members or by accepting the certification of the NDSAP as a validation of the good manufacturing practice for the products. Also, the way that we see it is that we believe that the regulatory agencies and health systems in the region can benefit in a considerable way by recognizing the audit reports or the certification from the audits, avoiding the necessary disruption in the supply chain of the medical devices, and also by optimizing the exercise of the audit for GMP's validation in the region by avoiding the needs to go to the manufacturing sites to perform them. Also, the objective is, of course, to ensure that the agencies and all the stakeholders, including the industry and private sector, understand the program and see the added value of bringing the program to the region, as we have some countries that already are on it. And with that, of course, understand that NDSAP program focus the evaluation of a medical device manufacturer quality management system to validate the GMPs. The general strategy, just to also remember it quickly, is 3 pillars that we have been working. That is map and assess the landscape and the regulatory agencies, drive the change that is about delivering the message of how beneficial could be NDSAP, and also the technical knowledge around it. And then, no less important, to work with the regulatory agencies as a one to shape their regulations in order to ensure that NDSAP could be properly adopted without generating any technical barriers in the middle, but also to ensure that once it's in the regulation, the agencies or governments make a proper implementation given the complexity of the region. So here you will be able to see what is the status of the roadmap that was presented in March. So in terms of capacity building, we are ongoing, and I'm going to show you in the next slide what is the specific status on this point. We already finished the initial mapping landscape to understand where we are in terms of the countries for NDSAP adoption or recognition, and also we finished the classification of the regulatory agencies according to the openness and where they are in terms of the NDSAP knowledge, recognition, and willingness to include in the regulatory framework. We are still assessing, we already start with a couple of countries assessing the regulatory framework to see what is needed in order to include NDSAP. And this is an analysis that is not related with the previous point. This is different from the willingness of the agency, but we need to be prepared understanding what is missing or what is necessary action need to be taken in terms from the intervention of the regulatory framework at the moment that we're going to start conversations with the external stakeholders. Also, we have been working on the drafting of the position paper about what is the Inter-American Coalition position on NDSAP, but this is still pending. We haven't been able to moving forward on it, focusing on other steps on the roadmap. The external engagement, this is important to mention that if you can consider that is way beyond in the roadmap, we have been already started conversations on NDSAP with different regulatory agencies, not only in 2024, but in the previous years. As Sandra have been shared before, the coalition has been very active on training on NDSAP, demonstrated the added value, also going with the regulators directly to talk about NDSAP. And we just recently, during August, was able to engage with one of the regulators in the region, if I am allowed to mention. Well, we had the chance to have a conversation with INVIMA when Sandra had the opportunity to share some documentation and some messaging about the opportunity to include the NDSAP validation, certification, recognition, given the fact that the Ministry of Health in Colombia, together with INVIMA, have been working on updating the regulatory framework for medical devices and IVDs. And together, this moves to the next one, that is support the implementation, that it is aligned of what I mentioned, is ongoing because we have been working with the agencies and other stakeholders about how they can moving forward the adoption and consider this as a smart regulatory approach from the GMP's validation perspective. So going on detail, this is where we are in terms of a capacity building. We already consolidated all the available resources, and what that means, all the guidelines that are available, they already were sent for translation. So ideally, we're going to have it available not only in English and Spanish, but also in Portuguese. Also, there was identified and collected all the trainings available, and by trainings, not only leveraging the trainings in the website of the coalition, but also many other trainings performed by regulators, by industry, by trade associations around the world in terms of NDSAP that makes sense to collect and bring them to the context of Latin America. So the next step is to, with all that information collected, finish to create or develop the training package of NDSAP. So part of the work is already done, and the expectation is to have it ready by the end of this month, in order that we can then, moving forward to the next step, release it for public consultation, following the good regulatory practices internally, but in a way that all the coalition members could review the training package, provide their feedback so we can align on the final version. And after that, we can proceed with the release of the official training package that is expected to be done in January, considering that we have December and the holidays in the middle, and also to provide proper timing, because we know that we have several documents to review from the different working groups at the same time, so to make it adequate. This is a date that is open for feedback. So if the members here consider that January is too close, once you have the training package in your hand, please feel free to let us know so we can adjust the timing depending of the feedback received. The idea is that we achieve the launching of the package. We can start the training deployment, and the idea is that we can revamp the training that the coalition has been doing virtually, but also start capitalizing the opportunity to make them face-to-face, using also not only the support of the regulatory agencies that have been supporting this engagement, but also leveraging on the content prepared within the training package. And the idea is that if the timelines remain, can be started in February 2025. And finally, no less important, we are expecting to have the official version of the position paper from the coalition on the NDSAP adoption in Latin America by March. This date is tentative, can be before if we move on time with the training package definition and launching. So this is where we are right now. So before moving to the next topic, as a next step, you will be receiving in the next 2 weeks the training package in a way that you can start the process of reviewing, validating the information, and providing feedback so we can proceed to adapt based on your comments and suggestions. Okay, in terms of the landscape mapping and the stakeholder classification, not gonna go on detail here. This is just to remind the step that we agree to follow in order to map and identify who is who in Latin in terms of NDSAP. And with that, we were able to build this map. What we are showing here is initial mapping of the regulatory agencies in terms of the NDSAP positioning and adoption. And well, you're gonna see here a rainbow of color that this represent a kind of color code. Let me just start with Brazil. Brazil is a member of NDSAP. They already have in the regulatory framework the NDSAP, considering that is one of the founding members, so that's why we are putting it in green. Then moving to the next country, we have Mexico that have a color code where it is green with yellow. What it means is that Mexico in the mapping, well, it is identified that is an affiliate member of NDSAP, that they mention in the regulatory framework the validation or adoption or recognition of NDSAP certification to demonstrate GMP, but it is highlighted with the orange because the way that they have positioning right now in the regulatory framework is through a communication that is not necessarily legal binding. This communication can be withdrawn at any moment. So there is still work to do to ensure that it will be finally included in the formal regulatory framework, considering that this is also part of the legal obligation they have with the USMCA agreement, trade agreement with the US and Canada. Moving then to Colombia, we have it in yellow with orange because they are not recognizing NDSAP up to date, but we were able to meet with the agency and deliver some messaging and documentation to advocate for the inclusion as an opportunity to moving forward in the NDSAP recognition and GMP validation. Then we have Ecuador and Peru when they are not accepting NDSAP as a recognition for GMP validation. It is important to highlight that in the case of Ecuador, it is not a requirement to present the GMP, but they are requesting the ISO. So the idea is that at some point they could also consider to include the recognition of NDSAP. In the case of Peru, there is right now ongoing a public consultation on a new regulation of IVD. So the idea that we can try to capitalize the opportunity to include the adoption of NDSAP, but is still ongoing. In the case of Chile, there is no NDSAP recognition. The coalition, since a couple of years ago, have been advocating to also take the opportunity to include in this new regulation, soon to come, the recognition of NDSAP, but it is highlighted in yellow because up to date, there is no complete confirmation that it is going to be included or not in the new regulatory framework. Then moving to Bolivia, they are not accepting NDSAP right now. It is not part of the regulatory framework, but through direct engagement with AGEMED and the local Chamber of Commerce, we were able to deliver some messaging and putting in the regulators' minds and the opportunity to include NDSAP, considering that they are working on a reliance regulation for medical devices and IVD. Then in the case of Argentina, Argentina is an affiliate member of NDSAP, but it's highlighted in blue because in the current regulatory framework, Argentina do not require to present the validation for GMP or present any GMP certification for imported products. So they are member, but there is not a need to cover so far. Then continue on the south, we have a Paraguay and Uruguay. Both are not recognizing NDSAP so far, and there is not in their agenda to work on it. There is a new regulation that just was released for validation, for public consultation, sorry. So I think that we have a good opportunity to take the chance and deliver some messaging and some opportunities to advocate for the inclusion. But as of today, this is the status at the moment that we make the mapping. And last but not least, we have Central America and the Caribbean. And it's, in general, the region is not accepting or is not including the NDSAP recognition in the regulatory framework. But that's why it is highlighted as red. But we put it in yellow because recently, a couple of months ago, there was a hard work with the private sector and the regulatory agency in Panama to work on the first regulation of medical devices and IVD and the proposal of accepting NDSAP as validation of the certificate was delivered. It is in the draft regulation, but we now, given the change of government, we need to wait for the work to be resumed and the document can go for public consultation or final publication. So this is the status where we are right now. And well, this is all goes together with the work of continue mapping the opportunities, and we hope that these these reds and yellow can change at the time that we can have more opportunities to advocate, but also to comment on any new regulation or update on the regulation in a way that we can moving forward the main objective of was mentioned before. So this is all the update that I have so far. Now I would like to open the opportunity for questions, comments. Steven.
Thank you, Douglas. Very nice presentation, and thanks for the leadership on this work. Maybe just a comment on a couple of items and a question. I would just reinforce with our members that it's not necessary for any of the regulatory authorities to be a member of MDSAP to accept MDSAP audit reports. They can not be a member, they can be an affiliate member, they can, at some point they can be a full member. There's the three different levels, but being a member does not, they can still accept MDSAP audit reports without that. And that has been a expressed reason by some authorities why they haven't yet recognized the reports. Two, regarding Mexico, I would agree with the classification green, yellow, but just maybe clarifying with you, it's correct that the NOM 241 hasn't explicitly accepted MDSAP report recognition or ISO 1345, and it's correct that there are separate non-binding measures that accept MDSAP for imports, but it's my understanding that it is not possible for COFEPRIS to use MDSAP for any of the production in Mexico, whether that's for Mexico or for products that are in the export-only zone. Is that correct?
It's my understanding, yes. But if there is someone from Mexico that have more information, happy to listen their perspective.
Okay, and you all, company members, have a much more acute sense of how important it is to have some of these provisions, to have regulatory certainty and legal certainty. If I were in your shoes, I would be rather concerned about building your whole market access structure on a document that could legally disappear with a pen stroke, which is the case of COFEPRIS recognizing MDSAP audit reports. So I'm an eternal student of the sector and of your company's operations. So if any of you wish to connect with me offline, I'd love to hear more about how important the regulatory certainty across the region is, including in Mexico on some of these things. Thank you.
No, thank you, Stephen. I think that is, your comments are quite accurate and very relevant considering the situation. So yeah. And just one comment that I forgot to mention is that the map that you saw, we're gonna share it in a way that we can all contribute to map if something is changing. And I will invite all the members of the coalition to please reach the working group if you identify that there are information to add in the map. The map was made last month, so maybe things can change in the way. So it's a living map to be updated.
Thank you very much, Douglas, and congratulations for your presentation. It was very comprehensive. So this is our last presentation. I want to thank again to all the working groups leader. It's been an amazing year, and please take advantage of Sandra's announcement early in the call about a meeting in person in November in, I think it was Punta Cana, you said, Sandra? Yes, I think it was Punta Cana
Yes,
in
it is.
November. So put it in your budget so we see each other and we get a better experience face to face. Having said that, I leave it to you, Sandra, for your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roberta. Thank you very much for to the leaders of the working group and to the all the participants in the working groups. And just a reminder that the working groups are always open to get additional aid, additional volunteers to take part on this amazing work that we are all going to be benefiting out of. I mean, the output of all these working groups is really going to be helping us in our daily conversations with the national regulatory authorities as we speak. So inviting you to join if you have not joined, and congratulations again for the great work that has been done. And well, without further ado, really thank you very much. I think this has been a very challenging year, not an exception since we first started just with COVID-19. The good thing is that every time that we start a new conversation and good regulatory practices come to that conversation, surprise is not as common as it used to be. And I think it is happening because of all the work that we all together have been doing in educating, in developing capacities. And I think that not having surprised faces when we speak about this is like the first step. But that is never going to be sufficient until we have formal standard operating procedures among all national regulatory authorities to make sure that whenever they're going to be developing a new regulation, updating a new regulation, they're really going to be considering them. So there's still a lot of work to do. We know there are challenges in regards of resources available at the national regulatory authorities. We know that it is a little bit of the chicken and the egg. We do not have resources to dedicate to proper implementation of GRPs, but they will never ever have proper resources if the regulatory frameworks that they develop are not following GRPs. They know more and more and more that we're very actively participating in a sound way, science-based way, looking for the best interest of all relevant stakeholders, looking for ways to protect regulators themselves from creating unnecessary barriers to trade and getting into further problems. We want, and they know that we want to help them prevent all these situations. And again, there's a lot of work to do there. Every single time that there's an open consultation or there's a working group where we have the chance to participate, that is a huge opportunity for us to make a difference. So really, thank you very much. And please provide all your input. Be prepared for our conversations next year. We're going to be updating our whole action plan 2025-2030. And actually, when Stephen mentioned we have to be prepared for the 2025-2030 action plan, I was like, oh my God, 2030? It seems to be so far away, but it was like the same when we said 2020, 2025, and we're almost there in 2025. So time flies. Your ideas, your needs are the ones that nurture the work that we do. That is the North Star of everything we do. And again, we appreciate all the work, the hard work that everybody's doing. And I'm just offering again the help of the coalition, the technical secretariat, to support you in your daily challenges as you face them in your own countries. So really, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. I don't know, Stephen, Leticia, if there's anything that you would like to add.
Thanks to everyone. Thank you very much. See you next time. Lots of great work.
Thank you. And Sergio, thank you very much. And actually, yes, probably we will not meet each other until, I mean, all of us together until 2025. So yes, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. And Happy
Bye-bye.
Thanksgiving to our
Bye.
US-based colleagues.
Oh my God,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Happy
Bye-bye.
holidays from here to next
Oh,
year.
Exactly.
please, happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Bye.
Okay, bye then.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.